Welcome to the information conference for Procure. This is a conference on nutrition and cancer. And we will also talk about the link between nutrition and all cancers, including prostate cancer. So we'd like to thank, obviously, all of the participants in the room and those who are following us on the webcast, because this conference is broadcast in English and in French on the web.
So we wish to thank all the participants following us via web, since our conference is broadcast both in French and in English on our website, procure.ca. Alors, je tiens à préciser.
I'd like to tell you that the conference is made possible thanks to educational support from Derstelis. We would like to thank as well our donors and one of our partners, Jensen, who have also made it so that this conference be possible. So a few reminders before we begin.
Internet, if you have not heard the voice of our translator as of yet, please click on the button back at the upper right corner of your screen and choose English. Entre-temps, vous avez tous.
In the meantime, you've all received a survey. You've got pens. Please take the time to write down your questions, because at the end of the presentation, we will have 30 minutes for a question and answer period. And for those of you who are on the web with us, you can submit your questions in French or in English. You just have to click on the question button, and we will receive your questions here, and we'll be able to read them during the Q&A period. Before we begin, I would like to introduce Procure. For those who don't know us, so Procure is the only organization in the province which is entirely dedicated to the fight against prostate cancer through information and support. I'm sorry, I just lost my papers. So we've got 3 pillars in our mission, as I've just mentioned. When it comes to education and support, I think that I'd like to say that we have a 1-855 toll-free number. We've got nurses who are specialized in uro-oncology. So when we get calls from patients, whether it's after a diagnosis or when they start their treatment or when they have side effects, they can speak directly to a health professional who is specialized in the field. Obviously, we've got our Procure conferences, such as this one. We have 2 a year. The next one will be in Quebec, and at the end of the conference, I will give you who will be the speaker and what the topic will be. We've now got a new initiative that's called a webinar. We've got 2 a year. The next one will be on the 24th of May, and I'll mention it at the end of Isabelle Huot's presentation. I'll give you more information. When it comes to research, we've got a biobank. A biobank is really a collection. It's where we keep samples, either of prostate tissue or all sorts of samples that we can put at the disposal of researchers so that they can do their research. And that's fundamental to clinics, and that can be at the provincial, national, or international level. When we talk about outreach, we've got the Walk and Tour of Courage coming up in June. The Walk for Courage is really a celebration of life. It's a celebration that happens at the Parc des Castors, and the lunch is included. Everybody gets together. There's music, there's a DJ, there's prizes to be won. So it's very festive. And perhaps you're wondering why we are here, why Procure exists, and why we invest so much in research, why we do conferences, why do we try to do some outreach work. And that's because 12 men every day get a prostate cancer diagnosis, 12 Quebecers, which means 4,800 a year. There are 880 that die from this every year, and the research that we invest in through our biobank is to find better treatments, to personalize them, and make sure that people don't die of this disease. It's the most common cause of cancers for men, whether it's in Quebec, in Canada, or in North America. It's really the #1 cancer for men. Obviously, we all know somebody who could be at risk. We've all got uncles, fathers, brothers, sons. So this concerns everybody. It's a cancer that progresses very slowly, and that is curable when it's detected at an early stage. And that's why screening with men is very important. And it's a cancer that will be 100% curable if it hasn't spread elsewhere in the body. Most of prostate cancers are discovered during a routine medical checkup. There's a blood test done, and that's how we will discover if people have cancer or not. There are no symptoms, or very few. And that's through the 4 stages of the disease, not just in the beginning, so we can have advanced cancer without any symptoms. We've established risk factors. There's age. We know that the risk increases with age over 60, but I would tell you that 50% of our cohort of patients that we've got at Procure, so those who call our toll-free number, and we get close to 600, 700 calls, 50% of them are between 50 and 59 years of age, and then afterwards it goes from 60 to 67. Family history, if you've got prostate cancer in your family, father, grandfather, brother, you are definitely at risk. If there are ovary cancers or breast cancer in the family, you're also at risk. Genetic mutations. We all know Angelina Jolie, who had a double mastectomy. She was a carrier of a gene. Her mother died when she was 50, but there is also this gene in men. So if there is a situation, a genetic cause in the family, well, it's important to have some screening, even if it's on the women's side. There's racial origin, ethnicity. We've noticed that prostate cancers are much more prevalent and more aggressive in black men, Afro-Americans, and we're starting to understand now that it's genetic. At the beginning we said, well, there's a vitamin D deficiency, their testosterone level is very high, but more and more with research we are discovering that there's a gene that is transmitted from generation to generation. There's geography. We know that men who come from Asian countries, whether it's Japan, China, they've got a diet that's completely different than what we see in Western countries. So they've got nutrition that is rich in fish, it's low in fat, and we are starting to really see the difference. They've got a rate of cancer, the lowest one in the world actually, when we talk about Japan and other Asian countries, the lowest cancer rate. But when we take an Asian man and we bring him to the Western world, within 1 generation his risk factor will be equal to ours. Other risk factors. We talk about nutrition, weight, sedentarity, fatty foods, red meat, junk food, vitamin D deficiency. And studies are starting to show a direct link. So there can be a link, cause and effect link. And what we see the most currently is a link between the aggressivity of the cancer at diagnosis and then when the cancer actually comes back. And that's why Isabelle Huot is here. We wanted to concentrate on this risk factor. So I will now ask Isabelle to come speak to you. But before, I'm going to introduce her properly. Oh, you want me to talk about this? You'll notice, I don't know if you've noticed, but in the front are volunteers who have welcomed you. They're wearing bow ties. Isabelle and I are wearing a bow tie. A bow tie is the symbol of prostate cancer in Quebec, but not just prostate cancer. It's really for the cause, the campaign, the Member. You may know Procure because of this. This happens in November, Bovember, and it's Lycopene who is the designer of this bow tie, and it's our most significant campaign for Procure and for prostate cancer. And during the next few weeks or months, we will reveal the new bow tie. You'll be able to see it. And we'll show it on our Facebook page, but also on our website. So for those of you who did not know Procure, but who knew the bow tie, you now know. So I'm going to introduce Isabelle. She's a nutritionist doctor, and she is the reference when it comes to healthy eating in Quebec. She is author and a speaker, and she's also a businesswoman. And she's been in the media for 15 years. She jumped to entrepreneurship in 2009, which was a first for nutritionists in Quebec. Her company, Kilo Solutions, which you saw at the entrance, and she just mentioned it before the conference, they offer all sorts of healthy snacks and meals, as well as well-being services with her team of experts, kinesiologists, and specialized psychologists. So we welcome, please, Isabelle Huot. Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. I had the opportunity to talk a little bit with you before the conference. So, hello, everybody at home. I hope that there are many people following us on the webcast. And thank you for being here. It's beautiful outside, and it's tempting to just not watch the conference and go walk outside. But congratulations to Procure for your mission, which is dear to my heart. Congratulations to Marie-Christine, who worked very hard on this conference. We've been talking about this for months and months, and I'm very pleased to be here. I've got a doctorate in epidemiology, as I said, in biostatistics. I love reading studies and to interpret them. I am specifically interested by prevention of cardiovascular disease and cancer. So everything that has to do with health promotion is really interesting to me. I find that we don't invest enough, and we can make a significant difference by moving and eating better. So that's the mission that I've given myself. So I'm still in the Journal de Montréal. I launched my company, and I said to myself, oh, well, you know, in the media, we're always it's always precarious, so I'm better off building my future with my company. But I'm still in the media. I'm on Salut Bonjour. I'm in the Journal de Montréal, in the Bel Âge magazine. I've got several articles, and I'm on Radio-Canada radio as well, Rouge FM. So cancer is dear to my heart. My mother died very quickly of a cancer that it's very rare. So I'm happy to talk about prostate cancer because we've got so much data. We're talking about prevention. We've got all sorts of studies. Breast cancer, same thing. It's very promising. My mother's cancer was an extremely rare cancer. There was no chemo. There was no treatment possible. So when we got the diagnosis, well, they were told, well, go write your will. You've got 2 months to live. She was 5 feet tall, 100 pounds. She was in very good health. And then we said to ourselves, my gosh, there are no resources. It's impossible. So that's why I'm looking at Procure, and I'm so excited because for my mother's cancer, there were no resources or treatment. So I've convinced my mother to have chemotherapy anyways, and there was no chemotherapy for that. So we did colorectal treatment that didn't work at all, but still. Anyway, so it's dear to my heart, but I'm very pleased to be here to talk to you about nutrition and prevention. So let's see, how will the conference be? There's about an hour of content. Afterwards, I'm very open to all your questions. Once again, if the questions go beyond cancer, there's no problem. I'm a generalist, so all questions that are linked to cholesterol, diabetes, obesity, food myths. There's so much information circulating just about everywhere on the web, and we don't know who to believe in anymore. I don't know if that happens to you. You're looking for information on the web, and obviously we're all Dr. Google, right? We go on Google and we type in a symptom and we find all sorts of information. Be careful. Who wrote the article? Is it an expert? Is it a doctor? Is it a nutritionist? It's important to validate the sources of information, especially if you have cancer. You're here tonight, you're listening to us. It's very easy to go use all sorts of therapies that have not been proven scientifically. So stick to experts before adopting certain practices. So what we'll talk about today, we're going to look at some stats on cancer. We're going to talk about general prevention. So the prevention of all forms of cancer, because we know that it's the main cause of deaths. 30 years ago, it was cardiovascular disease. Now we've worked so much on risk factors for cardiovascular disease, cholesterol, diabetes, hypertension, obesity, that the risk factors, in fact, can be so changed that we've decreased the incidence and the prevalence of cardiovascular disease. And now we are attacking cancer. We will talk about prostate cancer, of course. We're going to talk about what do we do? How do we eat when we're being treated? Because there are effects with radiotherapy, chemotherapy, hormonal therapy. What do we do if we're not hungry? etc. And then after cancer, I was talking with a few people who are in remission. So now we want to decrease our risk of getting cancer again. What behaviors do we adopt if we want to prolong our remission? So we've got some stats that are quite recent here. You'll see 2017 in Canada. Generally speaking, the incidence of cancer, 206,000. 206,000 new cases of cancer in the country annually. If we look at, I imagine that in the back you can't see very well, but if we look at prostate cancer, obviously it's the most frequent cancer for men. 20.7 or 21% of new cases of cancer are prostate cancers. For women, it's the breast cancer, with 25.5% of new cases that are breast cancer. The second cancer for men is colorectal, with almost 15% of new cases of cancer. For women, it's lung cancer, and then lung cancer for men, colorectal for women, then the uterus, etc. So we can see that there's a lot of these cancers. There's lung cancer, which is directly linked to the consumption of tobacco. The link has been clearly established, but we have to see if cannabis is also going to increase the risk of a colorectal cancer or lung cancer. We'll know more when the law is adopted. Look at deaths. If we look at deaths, even if prostate is the most frequent cancer for men, it's not the main cause of death. Why? Because we've got solutions. We've got good treatments. We diagnose early. Marie-Christine mentioned it earlier, where we've really got a better prognosis. When we have types of cancers such as my mother's, where the diagnosis is done when it's metastatic, well, obviously the prognostic is not as good. Is it possible to prevent the occurrence of cancer? Not completely. What we can do, though, is decrease the risk of having cancer. Most cancers anyways, because there are some where we've got very few studies, like brain cancer, for example. It's very hard to make a correlation between risk factors and the incidence of certain cancers. So cancer is multifactorial. There are individual factors, behavioral factors, environmental factors. We see pesticides for farmers who spread pesticide that increases our risk of cancer. Now, genetic predisposition, Marie-Christine mentioned it at the beginning of the conference. So 10% approximately of cancer cases, and all external factors, 40%. So tobacco and alcohol, we're going to come back to all of these. Sedentarity, the importance of physical activity, we're going to talk about that later. It's not just to lose weight. It's very efficient to decrease the risk of cancer as well. Bad nutrition, exposure to UV rays, and pesticides. There are fewer risks with the population, but really with people who spread pesticides. So what we've seen is that 40% of cancers are linked to behaviors that can be changed. And that's good news for us. That means that we've got power over our health. We can reduce in a considerable manner our risk of cancer. And just nutrition, and my colleague Richard Béliveau talks about it. I invite you to read his articles in the Journal de Montréal every Monday. It's very interesting. He talks almost exclusively of cancer. And 30% of cases of cancer could be avoided thanks to nutritional prevention, what we put in our plate. So when we talk about prevention, what does that mean exactly? It's to adopt behaviors that protect us, lifestyle habits and nutrition habits, and to avoid risky behaviors, that is, behaviors that increase our risk of having cancer. There's a wonderful study that was published in the UK where we really established the percentage of risk that is linked to alcohol. We said, okay, so in prevention, we've got nutrition factors that are significant. What cancers can be linked to cancer? 4% are linked to alcohol abuse. Now, not enough fruits and vegetables, 4.7%. There was a study in Radio-Canada that was published today, actually, where they say that if all Canadians ate 10 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, we would prevent many, many diseases, obesity, cardiovascular disease, and cancers. Do you know that there's 80% of Quebecers who don't even have 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day? We don't eat enough fruits and vegetables. If you remember one thing from my conference today is eat more fruits, but mainly more vegetables, because in fruits there's sugar, and we'll get back to that later. Red or processed meat, so everything that has to do with cold cuts, sausages, etc. 2.7% of cases of cancer can be linked to that. Not enough dietary fiber, there's a link to colorectal cancer. That's 1.5% of the cases of cancer. Salt. You know, we talked about the Japanese at the beginning of the conference. Yes, Japanese people, Asian populations, they've got protection factors in their food. The matcha, green tea, soy. Their calories, they eat less than North Americans, but they consume a lot of salt, and salt is linked to stomach cancer. Obesity, look, 5.5%, that's significant. So maintaining, we were talking about diabetes earlier, so have a healthy weight. That is the key to success. Richard Béliveau, he's my friend, and he often tells me, Isabelle, we should all have a BMI of 22. We talk, for healthy weight, we talk about 20 to 25. He says in epidemiology studies, people who are skinny, because 22 is being skinny, a BMI of 22, well, skinnier people have fewer cancers. And how can we reach a healthy weight? We'll talk about this later. And then physical activity, 1% for people who don't move enough. So in this study, that it's a meta study where they got all sorts of data from all sorts of studies, everything that was written about cancer prevention. Well, 20% of the case of cancer can be linked to nutritional factors, and it's comparable to tobacco use. If we don't smoke, if we move, if we eat well, we really decrease our risk, and we decrease a risk of getting cancer again. Now, when it comes to protective factors, we'll come back to each one of them. So physical activity, fruits and vegetables, nutritional fiber, and having a good weight. Now, dairy products, we're going to talk about this. There's some controversy. They may protect against colorectal cancer, but they may increase the prostate cancer risk. So what do? And nursing will protect women from breast cancer. So it decreases their risk of breast cancer by nursing their baby. Physical activity. Who does exercise 3 times a week or more here? Wonderful. Are there some who walk every day? Wonderful. That is the main recommendation. We don't have to go in a gym necessarily. Just walking every day can make a difference, a huge difference. If you can have intensity intervals, a little peak, you run for 30 seconds, no more, just to increase your heart rate. That will make a huge difference on the prevention of most types of cancers. The data is quite solid. It's very interesting. Here we can see prostate cancer decrease of 30% of the risk with 20 minutes of walking per day. It's huge. So walk, walk, walk. It's really worthwhile to include physical activity in your lifestyle habits. Fruits and vegetables, I talked about it earlier. So to have the 10 servings, it may seem complicated, but 1 serving is half a cup. It's easy to do in one day. Listen, a fruit in the morning, no juice. We know that juice, there's 3 teaspoons of sugar, so we prefer fruit because they contain fiber and they help prevent cancer. So a fruit in the morning, ideally a fruit that is rich in vitamin C. So for the immune system to maximize the absorption of iron, the cereal, the oatmeal that you're going to eat, because later we'll see that we're going to decrease our consumption of meat. So we don't want to be anemic. So what do? We add vitamin C, which will maximize the absorption of iron. Fruits that are rich in vitamin C, what are those? Kiwis, strawberries, citrus, for example. So vitamin C fruit in the morning and 2 other fruits throughout the day. Ideally, another fruit with a lot of antioxidants. So what fruit does that comes to mind when I say that? Pineapple? Blueberries? Absolutely. Blueberries, raspberries, goji, the little fruits. Pomegranate, very good as well. They now sell just the seeds that are frozen. And that's very practical. Yes, it's in the frozen fruits. President's Choice does this. It's very interesting because it's a little fruit that has a lot of antioxidants. In season, local fruits are wonderful and ideal. If not, frozen is fine. Cherries are very good as well. So at least one fruit that is rich in antioxidants. All fruits contain them, but the smaller fruits, berries, have even more. So have that every day. And then a third fruit throughout the day could be an apple. We've got soluble fiber. The message in this is to have some variety. The more you diversify your food, the better it is. One, because we never have the same nutrients in all fruits and vegetables. Second, you need color. Every color has pigments that explain the color. For example, tomatoes, it's red, so it's got its own nutrients that we also find in watermelons. So get a lot of color on your plate, and that is a behavior that is preventive as well. So now we've got our 3 fruit during the day. Ideally, you would have 7 vegetables. We're talking about 5, but 7's even better. 7 vegetables seems like a lot, but the tip is half of your plate at lunch should be vegetables, and same thing at night. If you eat 2 cups of vegetables at lunch and at night, you've got your portions. Or soups, minestrone soup, tomato soup, like an appetizer. That will help you eat more vegetables. If not, we can make smoothies. You can add kale in there. We can put a banana as well because kale needs a little sugaring up. So eating more vegetables, think about 1 green vegetable per day, 1 leafy vegetable per day. There's a lot of components that we call sulforaphanes, which have anti-cancer properties. Who here eats 5 servings of vegetables a day? Not too bad. And those who don't, is it because you don't like vegetables? It's okay in a soup, no? Or when you eat pasta. Have 2 cups of broccoli in there, add rapini, try new vegetables, try new fruits, and that is also part of healthy eating. Now, dietary fiber. Dietary fiber, they have a protective link for prostate cancer, colorectal, and breast cancer as well. And you know that we consume on average 15 grams of fiber a day in Quebec. The recommendations are 25 to 38 grams. So we need more dietary fiber, but obviously if you're eating white bread, you're not going to get a lot of fiber. Where do we get this fiber? All whole grain products. So whole grain bread. It's not because it's multigrain that it's whole grain. Whole grain is 1% whole grain. We want flour. We don't want a mix with white flour and grain flour. And go get different grains. Try quinoa, try kamut, so whole wheat is okay, but you have to vary your fiber. Where do we get this dietary fiber? In legumes. Do you like legumes? Chickpeas, kidney beans. You don't like it? Oh my gosh, you're so wonderful, because now I'm going to talk to you about eating less meat. So you're going to have to get used to the legumes, and we get used to digesting them. In the beginning, you get a little bit bloated. You're not used to it. The more you eat them, the better we digest them. And with probiotics, we digest them even better. We'll come back to probiotics later. So legumes, I think that you should have at least 1 to 2 meals without meat per week. You can have a chili. You can have a curry. We're going to talk about tofu later. Tofu is wonderful. It prevents all sorts of types of cancer. Edamame, wonderful. It's got a lot of isoflavones, which is a phytoestrogen, which can reduce the risk of prostate cancer as well. So increase your fiber intake, and that's good not only for preventing cancer, but it's also good for to prevent cardiovascular disease. It's good for diabetes. Fibers are excellent, and you know what? Fibers will feed our intestine. They are prebiotic. A prebiotic is the food of the probiotic. We know that we have to take probiotics, but we have to take prebiotics that are going to feed our probiotics. So that's what fibers do. They're excellent for you. Now, having a healthy weight is at the base of everything, and you say, okay, I want to reduce my risk. I want to reduce my risk of getting cancer. Again, I have to reach my healthy weight. And how do I get there? There's all sorts of theories flowing around when we eat too many calories or when we drink too many calories, because calories, liquid calories, do not sustain you as much as solid calories. So if I drink too many calories, obviously, I'm going to have too many calories, and if I have excess calories, I'm going to gain weight. Now, burning energy, we talked about this, physical activity, or basal metabolism. Currently, you're not moving, but you're still burning calories. You're breathing, your heart is beating. So this is what we call basal metabolism, the calories that you burn when you're at rest. The metabolism varies according to whether, if you've done a lot of diets in your life, you'll see that your metabolism will go down. If you are menopausal, your metabolism will slow down by about 200 calories a day, which causes weight gain. Hormonal therapy will also bring about weight gain. Physical activity is going to increase the calories burnt so that we've got a level that is more stable. We're not going to gain weight or lose weight. If I want to lose weight, well, then I have to reduce my calories or burn more calories. So now my energy needs around 2,000 calories, 1,900 for women, 2,300 for men. That's to maintain weight. If you are doing chemotherapy or radiotherapy, we'll talk about this later. Sometimes it's difficult because you don't have a lot of appetite. And when you don't have much appetite, we have a tendency to lose weight. So then we have to go get some nutritional complements or supplements. Are there some people here who weigh themselves every day? You're the only one? Usually all the hands go up when I talk about weight. But listen, our technician weighs himself every day. That's not good. We can't become obsessed, okay? Our weight varies quite a bit from one day to the other. There's water retention, so don't weigh yourself every day. It could be discouraging. Once a week is enough. You should measure your waist. 88 centimeters for women, 102 for men. Instead of targeting a weight, if you have weight to lose, try to get this waist size, because it's when the fat accumulates around the organs, that's where it's problematic for health. So that's your objective. And we see it, the two types of obesity, android and gynoid. So if you are pear-shaped or apple-shaped. So pear-shaped is for women after menopause and men as well. That can be more problematic for health because the fat is really right around the organs. This is my pound of fat. A pound of fat a week is enough. You should not aim to lose 10 pounds a week. It doesn't work. So a pound of fat, I have to burn how many calories? 3,500. Excellent. People don't usually have the answer. 3,500 calories. You have to cut 500 calories a day to lose a pound a week. And a pound is a lot. I mean, look at that. A pound of butter. That's wonderful. 1 pound a week. We don't want to lose weight too quickly. We want to maintain our weight loss. We want to change our lifestyle habits. So to lose this fat, we cut 500 calories a day. Or even better, we cut 300 calories and we move to burn 200 calories. Your 30-minute walk, well, you've just burnt 200 calories. If you have 3 little peaks of intensity, you've burnt 200 calories, and we will cut 300 calories in what we eat. 500 calories, what does it represent? So popcorn, microwave popcorn with extra butter. A quarter pounder with cheese is 500 calories. A large fry or an iced cappuccino, all 500 calories. Are these things that you eat? Not often? That's 500 calories, so it's easy. If I don't have my popcorn at night, I've just dropped 500 calories. If I do that every night, I'm going to lose a pound a week. To better eat, we have to plan and organize. You're here, you want better lifestyle habits, you want to eat better. Well, eating better, well, you need some food in your house. We need stuff in the freezer, because if you come home at night and you're tired, there have to be some things that are accessible so that you can make a quick meal. If not, it's too easy to go to the restaurant. And how does this work? Well, there are some foods that we keep at all times. So chickpeas, red beans, quinoa, frozen vegetables, frozen fruit, eggs. Eggs are wonderful. An omelet, it's a very healthy meal. It's wonderful. What do I have apart from that? Cheese, yogurt, plain yogurt. I can make salad dressing, all sorts of stuff with that. And then we can improvise. We can create a meal in 15 minutes. If you've seen my cookbooks, you'll see that they're very quick because we don't have time and we are tired. And if we're getting treated for cancer, we are twice as tired. We don't feel like doing a lot of prep work. There are some meals that are delivered at home as well. Miss Fresh, Cook It. You get everything. You cook. You don't have to do the groceries, so it's not as tiring. And often, you've got a lot of vegetables in those meals. It's not as environmentally friendly, but for $9 a person, it's really worthwhile. What is usually missing at breakfast time? A balanced breakfast. What's usually missing? The protein. Because often breakfast will be 2 toasts with some jam and coffee. That's not enough. That's just carbs. We want protein. The most recent studies show that when we have programs in the morning, 20 grams in the morning, 20 grams at lunch, 20 grams at night, we keep our muscle mass. So it's very important to have more protein in the morning. And more protein in the morning, that could be cottage cheese, if there's no lactose intolerance. Half a cup. It could be Greek yogurt. It could be a soy drink. We know that we want to have more soy in our diet. What else? It could be tofu if we make a smoothie. So a bit more protein in the morning. So in the morning, you've got your fruit. I really like oatmeal, without sugar. It's very interesting because there are soluble fibers in there, and soluble fibers help us to control our blood sugar levels. It can be whole wheat bread, almond butter, no jam. We know that we eat too much sugar already. And a dairy product or a substitute or an alternative. So everything that's soy-based. There's a chickpea drink that came out. It's got 10 grams of protein per cup. That's interesting. I discovered it at an exposition. And a source of protein. And you can have coffee, but I really like green tea. Green tea, there's all sorts of teas. We talked about matcha tea, which is a Japanese green tea. And it's a little bit bitter. When food is bitter, like kale, very dark chocolate, and green tea, when things are bitter, that means that there are good nutrients in that food, phytochemical components. So if you like green tea, wonderful. It's very good for you. If you eat on the road, look at the top there, the chai latte and cinnamon bun. Look at the calories. Look at the calories, the equivalent in butter and bread and butter. So it's half the calories of the day. But you've got a lot of carbs, and carbs, we eat too many of them anyways. There are studies, preliminary studies, that demonstrate that we should reduce our carbs to have a better prognostic. And at the bottom, look, a well-balanced breakfast. I've got my egg, I've got Greek yogurt, and I would replace a juice by fruit, and that would be even better. And look at the butter and the bread on the right. Fewer carbs. For the diabetic person who was talking to me earlier, this is a better choice. A bagel, not bad, but still, it's 4 slices of bread. Think about it. That's a lot of carbs. It's rare that they're whole grains, so probably not the best choice either. The slides are nice. Now the muffin. A big muffin. If you have a blueberry muffin, does it have antioxidants? No, because in the muffin, it doesn't count. You've got 4 slices of bread and 5 pats of butter. It's like a cake. So that increases your blood sugar. Look at the equivalents here. The muffin, that's not a regular latte. It's a coffee, mochaccino coffee. 20 ounces, 1,000 calories. Here I've got toast, peanut butter, cereal. What are good breakfast cereals? Anybody? Fiber One? All brand? Muesli? Muesli, there's a lot of sugar because of the dried fruit. Shredded wheat, Weetabix, those are the best choices. The shredded wheats, when you read the ingredients, it's whole wheat and that's it. There's nothing else. Shredded wheat and Weetabix. They're the best choices, but it's a little bit like grass, eh? It tastes a little bit like cardboard. They're not the best tasting, but if you want cereal without sugar, well, if not, a compromise, Cheerios. There's not enough fibers, but they're not sugared. They're not sweetened. So what do? I can add some flaxseed or chia seeds. So then I'm adding my fibers and I don't add any sugar. So we can do that as well. Or I love overnight oatmeal. Do you know that? Overnight oatmeal. You take half a cup of oatmeal flakes with half a cup of milk or soy drink, and you put 1 or 2 spoonfuls of chia seeds. You put it in the fridge, and the next morning you eat your oatmeal without cooking. It absorbed the milk. The oatmeal absorbed the milk. It's delicious. You put some berries on that. If you want it more creamy, you can add Greek yogurt. It's excellent. You got everything in there. You can leave and eat that at the office. It's really, really good. At Salut Bonjour on Wednesday, I'm going to make one so you can watch my show at 7:30 in the morning. So cereal, some fruit, that's a balanced breakfast. And you see, it's half the calories. The 500 calories that we had to cut, there it is. Now for lunch, what's missing? Same thing. We're missing our proteins. We don't have enough proteins at lunch. So what do you put in your sandwich? Cold cuts. I don't like it. Why? Because cold cuts are linked to colorectal cancer. The WHO said red meat potentially cancer-causing. Cold cuts cause cancer. Why? Because there are nitrates. And nitrates transform into nitrosamine, which cause cancer. So it doesn't mean that we can't eat them, but just eat less of it. If I eat cold cuts once a week, it's okay. If I eat some every lunch, it's too much. Now, there are companies who have launched cold cuts without nitrates. So there's Charlevoix. They've got white ham. There are no nitrates, but there's celery salt, which is a source of nitrates, which transforms in nitrosamine as well. Because if we don't put any nitrate or celery salt, well, the ham, it loses its color. Nitrates are a preservative. So for it to keep longer, we need nitrates. There are new products. Today, I got from Du Breton, they launched cold cuts, no nitrates, no celery salt. Oatmeal also has, they did some R&D for 2 years to launch cold cuts with antioxidants that replace nitrates. So that's where we are now. The cold cuts now are becoming healthier. The lists of ingredients, instead of being hidden on the back, they're on the front of the packaging, so we can read it and say, okay, well, I prefer this. This is a product that's got a plain label. The list of ingredients. When you buy a product at the grocery store, don't look at the calories. Look at the list of ingredients. What is in this product? Do I have 10 preservatives? Preservatives, Health Canada allows 550 preservatives. We can't tell you today that preservatives cause cancer, but what we haven't studied is that if each additive taken on its own is not cancer-causing at the doses that we consume, what happens when we put them all together? What is a synergy of preservatives when we bring them together? We don't know that, and that worries me. I can't tell you today I've got data on this. All I'm telling you is eat foods that have a short ingredient list, as few preservatives as possible. If you buy a granola bar, you don't make it at home, take the bar with the shortest list of ingredients, which looks like something that you would cook at home, and that's very important. Now, to come back to lunch, we want protein. We want not too many cold cuts, so what do we put in our sandwich or in our salad? Chicken, fish, tuna, salmon, a can of sardines. I know that not everybody likes sardines, but they're very good. Fish, we should eat it 3 times a week. We eat it maybe once a week. Cook more chicken breasts. Use the leftover chicken for your salad or your sandwich the next day. Tofu is excellent. Tofu spread is wonderful. A chickpea salad, edamame salad. So vary your lunches. Do not take this as an example. This is not the best lunch at all. So, did anybody eat this over the past month? Oh, finally somebody's admitting and being honest. This here, I've got 14 slices of bread and 16 pads of butter. It's huge. Imagine if I add an apple pie to this. So this is not the best choice. Obviously, there's a lot of fat, and too much fat is linked to cancer as well, especially bad fats. Emma is my wonderful stage worker from France. So this, no, and this, please don't eat this bucket of chicken, Emma, while you're here in Montreal. So in the bucket here, well, I mean, it's crazy. This equals that. 6,000 calories. I don't need to tell you that it's a lot of bad fat, that my friend Cyril Darès, who went in the kitchens to see how the sauce was prepared, didn't have anything good to say about the sauce, but I'm not here to smack talk this company. In every restaurant, there is a better choice. I'm always on the road. I stop at Tim Hortons sometimes. I stop at McDonald's. I'm going to have the salad. I'll have the wrap. I'll make the right choices because I have made the decision to eat well. It's easy for me, regardless of where I am. I never have the excuse of saying, well, I'm on the road and that's why I'm not eating well. I eat well everywhere I go. Sometimes I stop at the dep, at the convenience store, and I find some okay choices so we can eat well no matter where we are. It just takes a bit of willpower. Pasta. People say terrible things about pasta, but we can eat pasta now. There's quinoa pasta, which is wonderful. But we have a tendency to have a big portion, a big serving. Our serving often is 3 cups. It should be 1 to 2 cups. My tip, add some rapini, some broccoli, some vegetables. We know that we need to eat more vegetables, so put some spinach in there. Have a small portion of pasta and add your protein. And add some vegetables, all sorts of vegetables. You'll have a big, big plate. We love our big plates in Quebec. So it's wonderful. Eat the whole plate, but you'll be eating more vegetables. So that's perfect. I discovered legume pasta recently. They're made with lentils. Ingredient, lentil, period. It's wonderful. 14 grams of protein in a serving. And there you eat the pasta. You don't need to add protein because if I take a Greek yogurt, I've got my 20 grams in protein. So lentil pasta is very interesting. There's Gogo Quinoa, who makes this pasta. So the plate on the bottom, same size. At the top, Bolognese spaghetti, traditional. At the bottom, there's 1 cup of pasta. I added some tuna, basil, little tomatoes. I add a minestrone soup. Look at the calories. I've got more food, but it's much healthier. No, I would not advise that. And don't take any bread at the restaurant. They bring you the bread, and honestly, if you don't want to eat it and the service is a bit slow, you're going to eat it anyways. We always eat it anyway, so you can say, no, no bread. Here, for supper, half the plate is vegetables. I've got 3 colors here. And even if I've got white, it's okay. Because we say white, it's got no color. But the white, leek, garlic, onion, there are antibacterial components. There's good nutrients in that as well. So all colors, including white, in your vegetables. I could have changed the crackers to put something a bit healthier. Like what? What's a good cracker? Melba? It's okay. Rivta, Kavli, Waza. It's a nice list of ingredients. Not everybody likes a taste. If not, Triscuit. I like Triscuit quite a bit because it only contains whole wheat. But there are some Triscuits that are low in salt. When you see low in salt, we're talking about 140 milligrams of sodium and less. So Triscuits. And I've got 100 grams of meat. So the palm of your hand, that's the right portion. We eat too much meat, and we should better spread out the protein throughout the day. And at night, we don't need 6 ounces of meat, honestly. Between 75 and 120 grams of meat at night. And that's the palm of your hand. It's the size of the palm of your hand. Look when I put them side by side. And I've even added the apple turnover here. There's a big difference in the calories. And in addition to this, when I have a lighter meal, I sleep better. If you have a big meal at night, it's going to affect your sleep because you're wasting energy digesting, and that affects your sleep. And those who are in treatment, you are more tired. It's important to sleep well at night. It's very, very important. A little trick that makes all the difference. Here, you've got 200 grams of meat. There's a cup of rice and a cup of vegetables. You leave from here, you double your vegetables, you decrease your rice by half, you decrease your meat by half. 177 calories less. Over a year, if you do this every day, you will lose 5, 10, 15 pounds? 18 pounds. 18 pounds by cutting in your plate every night. It's easy. Most people want to lose 20 pounds. Well, do it in a year. Do it slowly by cutting back a little bit. You double your vegetables. It doesn't show. It's very simple. You double your vegetables and you'll lose 20 pounds in the year. I like the approach of eating often, eating less during meals, but more often. And that's what we're going to see, especially when appetite is affected. So we don't eat too much. It's going to help with digestion. It's going to decrease bloating. 3 meals, 3 snacks. But what kind of snacks do we have? For snacks, ideally, we're going to combine carbs and protein. Carbs will give you energy quickly. Carbs come from where? Well, fruit, vegetables, crackers. The proteins will slow down the absorption of the carbs so that your blood sugar is more stable, you got more energy. So ideally we eat every 3 hours. So you have your breakfast at 7, at 10 you have a snack. Your snack can be an apple. If you have an apple, you'll be hungry at 10:30. So almonds and an apple. And with the almonds will help you go to lunch. It makes all the difference. And the right portion for nuts is a handful with your hand closed. I like Brazilian nuts, which have a lot of selenium. 1 nut a day gives us our selenium for the day. Selenium is a mineral that helps protect against cancer, not as a supplement, but in foods. You'll see the message today is that there is a lot of foods that we're going to talk about that have anti-cancer properties. They're rich in beta-carotene, in vitamin C, but in vitamin E as well. When we take them as supplements, the relationships is reversed. An antioxidant becomes a pro-oxidant when we consume too much. So we come back to consuming through our foods. It's excellent, but avoid supplements. Even green tea supplements, you're better off having foods, because in foods, there's not just the antioxidant, there's a synergy of components. So it's beneficial for the organism. If you have a multivitamin, I don't have a problem with that. They're microdoses. Often, if you're in treatment and you don't eat much, they will tell you to have a multivitamin to compensate for the fact that, well, if you're nauseous, if you don't feel well, it's going to compensate a little bit for some deficiencies. But don't have vitamin E, beta-carotene, and selenium supplements because they increase the risk. So here are ideas of snacks, fruits, with a soy drink, for example. It could be a fruit with cottage cheese. It could be vegetables with hummus. It could be vegetables with cheese, a low-fat cheese, because we know that dairy products that have a high fat content can increase the risk of cancer. So nuts and grains, wonderful. Every day you should have nuts. Pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, almonds. They have a lot of calcium. Calcium that we don't get in dairy products, we can get with almonds. Cashews, pistachios, all nuts are really, really good for your health. So that was the snacks. Now to get your healthy weight. Some people told me I'm always hungry. How am I going to stop myself from eating? Go for nutrients that decrease the appetite. Which ones? What are the nutrients that will cut your appetite? Protein and fiber. When you buy a food that's got a lot of protein and fiber, you won't be as hungry. So that's a good tip. So also go for foods that have fewer calories per gram. So essentially, vegetables. You cannot eat too many vegetables. Vegetables are excellent for you. Fiber, we mentioned this. Soluble fibers, chia, psyllium, the apple of the skin for apples. You'll have more energy. If you're lacking energy because you're in treatment, well, having soluble fiber is going to help you have more energy. If you wake up in the night as well, sometimes you can have a blood sugar drop at night and we wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, add a snack at night, Greek yogurt with chia seeds, for example. It'll stabilize your glucose and you won't wake up at night. It could be another cause, but that's one of the causes. In other sources of protein, grains and nuts, soy protein, brown rice, and grillon flour. Do you know what that is? Oh, it's grasshopper flour. We're starting to cultivate that in Quebec. So they've got one that's 14 grams of protein for 2 tablespoons. You can put it in your smoothie. And honestly, it doesn't have much taste. But the bug in itself, I've got to tell you that, not too appetizing. If you heard me on Mario Dumont 3 weeks ago, he was eating grasshoppers. I brought him all sorts of bugs, and ugh. But there's a lot of protein. That's why I'm mentioning them. So grasshopper powder is another source of protein, and it's environmentally friendly, and it could be interesting if you can stomach it. Now, dairy products in general prevention, calcium, vitamin D. There's protein. We've got components like leolinic acid, lactoferrin, lactic bacteria. There are components in dairy products which generally are good for colorectal cancer prevention, essentially. In our studies, the people who consume a lot of dairy products have less colorectal cancer. The problem is that there were a few studies that demonstrated that people who eat a lot of milk and dairy products, so over 1,500 milligrams of calcium per year, had a higher risk of prostate cancer. And now, a little bit is good, but too much is not good. So if you drink a liter of milk a day, that's probably too much. What we don't know in the studies, is it because you have a liter of milk with 10 Oreo cookies? Well, is it the cookies? Is it the milk? We don't know. So we're trying to control we try to control for these factors in the studies, but I always say that a glass of milk is good, and then afterwards is variety. Yogurt, a bit of cheese, but perhaps not 4 glasses of milk. If you're here because you had prostate cancer or you were just diagnosed, a glass of milk is enough. In the next food guide, we consulted the food industry. Well, we didn't ask milk producers and other groups for their opinion. So I think that the guide will follow the Brazilian guide and the Harvard guide. And what Walter Willett says, he's my mentor, he's an epidemiologist. What he says is that 1 glass of milk a day, perhaps 2, no more. So that's what we should stick to. But soy drinks, I really like. Risk factors. Alcohol. There's an article from Richard Béliveau last week. It's very interesting. And alcohol. We know that alcohol increases the good cholesterol. So we've always said, cardiologists have said, women have how many glasses of wine per week? Or how many glasses of alcohol? 7 to 9. Men, 14, 2 glasses a day, spread out throughout the week. You can't drink them all on the weekend there. So those are the recommendations for cardiovascular health. And now we realize, we've seen over the past 2 years in our studies, that it's kind of like a U-curve. A little bit protects, but as soon as we go over the 2 or 3, it increases all sorts of cancers. The pharynx, the mouth, esophagus, prostate cancer. There are links with several types of cancers. And then we tell ourselves, okay, well, we will go with moderation, especially breast cancer. In fact, I said prostate. Did I make a mistake? I think it's breast. I'll mention them later. Yeah, so breast cancer, absolutely. A woman who drinks more than 2 glasses of alcohol a day has a higher risk of breast cancer. So we say maximum 1 glass a day. A little bit is good, too much is not good. And what we say is that in red wine, there's resveratrol, which protects against cancer. And the message to remember is that if you drink alcohol, go for red wine because it will eliminate the toxic effects of alcohol. That doesn't mean that you drink a bottle a day, but it's better to drink red wine. It's got a lot of antioxidants. And your glass of wine, the portion, what's a glass of wine? A normal serving? 4 ounces? It's 150 mils, so 5 ounces. That's a glass of wine. If you've got the big cups, the big glasses of wine, measure it once and you'll see. It's a very small glass, really. It's just the bottom of the glass. If you've got little wine glasses, it's a full glass. Measure your glass of wine once. But a bottle of wine is 5 glasses. So it's 5 glasses, ideally 1 glass a day. If you don't drink, don't start drinking. If you don't want to drink, it's fine, but that's a recommendation. Is to spread it out throughout the week. Now, obesity, we talked about this. Okay, so I'm going to go to my points right away. Okay, so alcohol. We know that most Quebecers drink, and they drink beyond what we suggest. And the cancers that are linked to alcohol: colorectal, breast, mouth, larynx, pharynx, esophagus, and liver. And I'm sorry, the prostate's not here. So these are cancers that are linked to high alcohol consumption. This is according to the studies. With alcohol, it's ethanol that's problematic. We talk about wine, but all forms of alcohol, spirits, beer, they're problematic as well when we consume too much of it. Now, excess weight. Half Quebecers have excess weight, or they're obese. 15% are obese, a BMI of more than 30. And obviously, this is linked to all sorts of cancers: colorectal, liver, esophagus, breast, and pancreas. So these cancers are linked to obesity. Red meat, we talked about it earlier. Red meat and cold cuts. We should really decrease our consumption of red meat. There are studies that say 500 grams a week. I think it's too much. I would go lower than that. 3 servings of 85 grams maximum per week. And I'm even more severe. I'm going to tell you to become a flexitarian. You know what that is? Flexitarian is a part-time vegetarian, because this is me. That means you eat mostly plant-based foods and meat once in a while. It's like secondary in your nutrition. Small portions, quality meats without antibiotics, without growth hormones. Organic if possible. We buy meat. Yes, it's more expensive, but you eat half of it. So it's wonderful. And avoid carbonizing or burning the meat. Meat that you burn on the barbecue can lead to cancer. Cold cuts as well. For each 50 grams that we eat per day, we increase our cancer risk by 18%. So twice as dangerous as red meat. So what do we include in cold cuts? Well, all cold cuts, but salami, bologna, sausages, pepperoni, yeah. When you eat pizza, have a vegetarian pizza or homemade pizza with whole wheat pita, lots of vegetables, shrimp, why not? Okay, earlier we talked about nitrates, frying barbecue when it's too cooked. And now we think that iron has a role to play here. So now we're like, okay, well, I eat red meat for iron. And now we're saying that iron causes cancer. It's not clear yet. The data is not clear yet, but there is a there's a link between iron and the fact that it may lead to cancer. Well, ground beef, yes, you have to cook it well because of the E. coli, and if you're being treated, your immune system is weaker, so we don't want red ground beef. Especially for ground beef, you have to cook it completely. That's a very good point. So as I said, maximum 3 servings of 85 grams per week, or 3 ounces of meat. 2 is even better. And what do we include in red meat? Beef, pork, lamb. Pork, sometimes some people say that it's a white meat. Duck. So we don't eat that. So what do we eat? We eat turkey, we eat chicken, we eat a lot of fish, seafood. A lot of people don't like fish. Start with mild fish, tilapia, mai. So these that don't taste as fishy, it's easier to eat them. If you have salmon and trout, well, obviously the taste is more intense. Salt is linked to stomach cancer. That's why in Asian countries they have a greater occurrence of stomach cancer. We eat 3,400 milligrams of sodium per day. It should be 2,300. We eat too much salt. And salt, where does it come from? Well, it comes from processed foods. 77% of the sodium that we consume comes from processed foods. So it's not your little salt shaker. It's not when you're cooking. It's really the soups that you buy in a can, sauces. There's salt everywhere. There's cereal that is sugary, that has all sorts of sodium, pastries. Read the labels and you will see. So look for low sodium foods or foods that have 5% of sodium or less. I was telling you that supplements increase the risk. So beta-carotene, vitamin E, and selenium. In all the studies, there's a positive link. So the antioxidant becomes a pro-oxidant. So avoid these. But in foods, there's no problem. There's no study that has shown that selenium in nuts, in seafood, had a link to cancer. And it protects, actually. Oh, that's where there was a mistake. There's an R missing. Can we prevent prostate cancer? Now we're going to talk specifically about preventing prostate cancer. We talked about calcium, not to go over 1,500 milligrams a day. Nutrition that has too much fat, especially saturated fat that we find in butter, that we find in cream, or in fatty meats. There's a link. So we try to have a nutrition that is lower in fat, 20-25% of the calories in fat. And good fats, olive oil, avocado oil, nuts and grains, and decrease your consumption of saturated fats, especially meats, red meats, and processed foods, especially beef and pork. And now what protects? Lycopene. Lycopene, there's 70 studies that say that it's very positive, and 30% say that the effect is neutral. But the effect is never negative. So I say, well, if 70% of the studies show a beneficial correlation with prostate cancer, well, then we will tell you to eat it. So lycopene is a pigment, a red pigment that we find in tomatoes, especially when the tomato is cooked. And when we add fat, like olive oil, it's going to maximize the absorption of the lycopene. Very interesting. Do you like tomatoes? Tomato sauces? Pasta. Come on, we don't want Alfredo sauce, eh? We want tomato sauce. Even pizzas. There are studies with Italians, those who consume more pizza, less prostate cancer. But no pepperoni, of course. And lycopene, apart from tomatoes, you find it in pink grapefruit. Grapefruit, be careful if you take certain medications, antidepressants, hypertension. It may be detrimental. So talk to your pharmacist about this. Lycopene in red pepper. It's a red pigment. So red foods contain lycopene. This, I mentioned it, with the fat. Watermelon as well has quite a bit of lycopene. Selenium, I mentioned this before. In foods, it protects you. There are several studies that demonstrate this. And once again, there's about 20% of the studies where it says there's a neutral effect, but nothing negative. So fish, chicken, turkey, legumes, eggs, all of these, but that are not red meat. So legumes, like I said, eggs, and seeds and nuts, but Brazilian nuts in particular. Soy, we talked about this. We were talking about the Japanese earlier. I don't know if you went to Japan, but they've got soy everywhere. They've got all sorts of tofis. They've got edamames, tempeh, which is fermented soy. It's wonderful. But the taste is quite strong. I don't know if you've ever tried tempeh. You have to marinate it. It's a very pronounced taste. In soy, we've got what we call phytoestrogens, which behave like estrogen. In fact, they have a hormonal and anti-hormonal role, so they have both roles. And women who eat soy, especially before the development of the breasts, if we're exposed to soy very young, less breast cancer. For men, less prostate cancer. So we really recommend that you have more soy in your nutrition. Even women who've had breast cancer, for a long time we said no soy if you take tamoxifen. Now that has changed because in our new studies, we've realized that women who had breast cancer and who consumed more soy reduce their risk of having another cancer by 25 to 50%. So soy is very beneficial. Replace your meat with soy. Integrate soy in your nutrition in the isoflavones, which is a type of phytoestrogen. The most marked is the genistein, which is very beneficial. Once again, not supplements. We're always talking about nutrition here, foods. Omega-3s. There's no direct link. There's a trend, a promising trend for prevention of cancer. It's not as direct as soy. It's not as direct as lycopene. But still, omega-3s, so fish, it's anti-inflammatory. It helps fight depression as well. We know that there's anxiety linked to the diagnosis sometimes. During the treatments, it can decrease your anxiety. It doesn't treat a severe depression, but there are very promising studies for light depression, irritability. We talked about hormonal treatments. Sometimes there's irritability. Omega-3s are very beneficial for this. There's a component that we call the EPA, which for 1 gram a day will stabilize the mood. So that can be very useful as well. If not, there's fish 3 times a week, especially fatty fish. So there are different types that are more contaminated with mercury. So swordfish and tuna, there's more mercury, so it's important to vary your fish. White tuna in a tin is more contaminated. Now, flax seeds have a lot of omega-3s, but in a different form than omega-3s from fish. So nothing is as good as fish. You can't say, I'm not going to eat fish, I'm going to have flaxseed is going to replace. No, it doesn't completely replace. So when we do studies of association with populations who eat more fish, they have fewer cancers. When we do clinical studies, the link is not as clear. Vitamin D, I love that. Do you take a vitamin D supplement? I suggest you take a supplement of vitamin D. There's a link with more aggressive prostate cancers. The supplement is recommended. There's a protective effect. 1,000 UIs a day is what we recommend as a supplement because it's very difficult to get in our nutrition enough vitamin D. There's a bit in milk, but now you'd have to drink 2 liters a day. But there's a bit of margarine, a bit in fish, a bit in mushrooms. Very few food sources of vitamin D. We synthesize with the sun, but in Quebec, we don't spend 30 minutes a day in the sun. If you go to Florida in the winter, it's different. If your face and your hands are exposed to 15 minutes a day, then you're good. But if not, take a supplement. I recommend taking the supplement all year long. It's not toxic at all at this dose, and it's worthwhile. Vitamin E. There are a few studies that seem to demonstrate an effect. So vitamin E, where do we find this? We find it in oils, in legumes, nuts and grains. Listen, there's a lot of nutrients, but listen, it's simple. Nuts and grains, vegetables every day, it's easier than just thinking about selenium. Eat some nuts every day, eat some vegetables every day. Be a bit more flexible, a bit of edamame, a bit of soy, some chickpeas. It's easier to make this transition than saying, oh, well, I need vitamin E, I need beta-carotene. Go with global recommendations that are easier to remember. There are the Metformin. This is a medication to treat type 2 diabetes. And we realize that people who take this had a lower risk of having prostate cancer. And it increased the survival prognostic. It's promising, it's new. I'm mentioning it because it's quite recent in the literature. And this brought me to new studies that I read on the blood sugar index. Studies show that when there are fewer carbs, this had a protective role against prostate cancer as well. Carbs, we eat too many of them. Often it's pasta and bread. You know, we have a tendency to have a nutrition that's very high in carbs. And what we want is not to have a carb-free diet, but it's to not have, like, eat 3 cups of pasta, to reduce our carbs a little bit, to reduce a little bit our fats, to add vegetable proteins. It would be a nutrition pattern that is linked to the reduction of the risk of cancer. So how do we reduce the risks? So varied nutrition, low in fat, 7 to 10 servings of fruits and vegetables, limit red meat, eat soy, lycopene, selenium, vitamin D, omega-3. So fish, nuts, tomatoes, tomato sauces, vitamin D supplement. We avoid having too much calcium. Yes, a glass of milk or 2, but no supplements, and you keep a healthy weight. During treatment, it's very important to eat well because you're fatigued. You can be nauseous. According to the treatments, there are many side effects. You need more protein, more calories, more minerals. You have to eat well, and we're not always hungry, right? It's a phase that is very, very key to help us get better. It's important to eat well. Proteins, we talked about this quite a bit. If you're not hungry, sometimes we don't want to eat meat at all, right? So you can go get a supplement with soy, like a powder supplement that we can integrate, that we can put in a smoothie. There's our protein. It doesn't taste like meat. So that can be a nice solution to get some proteins that way. Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, seeds and nuts. If you've got diarrhea or you throw up, you lose a lot of electrolytes, it's important to drink a lot, to stay hydrated. So a glass of water when you get up, a glass of water before every meal, drink throughout the day. Jazz up your water. Put some lemon, some lime. Why not mint, cucumber slices? So flavor your water naturally, and it's going to make it more attractive. If you don't have enough saliva, putting acidity in your water is going to help as well. If you put some lime or some lemon, you can add a bit of juice. Not the Nestle stuff, because there's colorants and preservatives, but just a little bit of juice to give a little bit of taste to your water. You can have your matcha tea. You can make iced tea at home with lemon. That way there's no sugar. You could put a bit of honey, but not too much. Now, mint, peach, rosemary, ginger, it helps if you're nauseous. Cinnamon sticks in black tea is wonderful as well. It can be a herbal tea with cinnamon or with cloves. You have to eat enough. We were talking about losing weight before, but sometimes there are people who lose weight because of treatments, and then you have to boost your calories, but you're not hungry, so what do? Smoothies. It can be Ensure or Boost. Obviously, I prefer a homemade smoothie because you can put a lot of good ingredients in there. So strawberries, peanut butter, bananas, wheat germ, chia seeds. Liquid calories are easier when we're not hungry. You have it cold, you drink it slowly, and you can have 400 calories in your drink. So if you don't have an appetite, this can be very useful to you. And the other problems that we have, fatigue. Your taste of smell changes. Your mouth can be dry. You can have constipation, diarrhea. So when it comes to radiotherapy, so fatigue, diarrhea, and digestive problems, hormonal therapy, you can gain weight, lose muscle mass, osteoporosis. You have to keep an eye on that. You have to protect your bones. There could be anemia as well. The increase of diabetes and cardiovascular disease increases. So all the advice I gave you earlier, it's prevention for cancer, but honestly, it's prevention for cardiovascular diseases too. And also for diabetes. Chemo, well, fatigue, nausea, diarrhea. When we lose weight, it can weaken our immune system, and we want our immune system to be strong. We want it to fight against the disease. So to prevent, as I said, there are probiotics that will help in strengthen your immune system and antioxidants as well. When we're not hungry, we eat a little bit, but often. If you're not hungry at lunchtime, don't force yourself. You can eat at 2 o'clock. Eat when you're hungry. When the appetite is there, jump on the opportunity. Eat then. Don't impose times when you don't have an appetite. Avoid drinking while you're eating. It can decrease your appetite. And perhaps have a supplement. We talked about that. And walking every day will help you stimulate your appetite. When you gain weight, we talked about this. Decrease fat. Have more vegetables and lean protein. Fatigue. Fatigue affects 75% of people who are in treatment. Hydration is very important. Often we're tired, we're just dehydrated. If you've got a migraine, you may be dehydrated as well. Eat small meals more often. It's easier on your blood sugar. We have better energy. Perhaps having stuff that's ready in your kitchen. When you're fatigued, maybe you don't feel like cooking, especially if you live alone. Having meals that are done, there's balanced meals that are ready. It helps you out because you eat the meal, it's balanced or no preservatives. It's made by Jérôme Ferrer. So you don't have to cook and you keep your energy. So it may be that. Delegate, okay? Delegate to your family. And that can help you out as well. Smoothies, I mentioned it. Add some vegetables in there. Put some kale, put some spinach. It's easy. A pumpkin puree, why not? There's all sorts of antioxidants in there. Have I been talking for an hour and a half? Is it 8:30 already? Almost. I've got so many things to tell you. Now, the change of taste and smell. Sometimes it smells like metal. Let's say you want to eat kale, but it's so bitter you can't do it. With apples, a little bit of apple juice, it's going to take away the bitterness a little bit. Now, sweetened foods, a metallic taste, like utensils, sometimes it's hard. So use plastic utensils if you always have a metallic taste in your mouth. Smells, sometimes you just can't. So have a cold meal. When you cook, the whole house smells and you can get nauseous, so eat cold food, salads that can help you. And if you're really not eating a lot, well, you need to take a supplement with vitamins and minerals. For your mouth, for dry mouth, good dental hygiene, drink often, add a bit of acid with lemon juice. There's medication as well to produce saliva. Talk to your pharmacist about this. Inflammation of the mucous membranes in your mouth, so avoid food that is too acidy or spicy. So have some cold foods with a soft texture. nausea and vomiting, small meals that don't have too strong a smell, that will help. Diarrhea. So now we'll say the opposite of what I usually say. Well, first of all, you eliminate lactose. You eat foods that have that don't have a lot of fiber, like white rice. It's going to decrease diarrhea. Bananas, cheese. You hydrate well, obviously. You're losing a lot of liquid, so you have to build it back up. You can have a rehydration. You can make a type of homemade Pedialyte or Gatorade. So you take, so it's orange juice, water, and salt. So you get potassium in the orange juice. And in the salt, you have your sodium. So you get your electrolytes back this way. It's the same drink for people who do marathons or physical activity of more than an hour and a half. You need electrolytes. Constipation, a lot of fiber, a lot of water. Probiotics can help as well. Activia yogurt accelerates the transit. So 2 Activia yogurts with flax seeds, I'm telling you, it's going to help your constipation, which may be due to your treatment, and plums as well. Supplements, we talked about this, Boost and Ensure. Sometimes that's all we can eat, very cold. It can help. During treatment, we continue to move. We continue to move as much as possible. I mentioned it. I'm going to come back to this often. Even resistance exercise can improve your prognosis. So yes, walking, but do some muscle work as well. That way you will preserve your muscle mass. I don't want to spend too much time on this because we've got a big pro who's going to come talk to you about this next October. And who is it? You'll find out in 5 minutes. So, very quickly, tips to move. So after cancer, in 5 minutes. Well, it's the same type of advice that I gave you at the beginning. So vegetable nutrition, nutrients, lycopene, have a healthy weight, and move. It's the same thing. We want to minimize the risk of the cancer coming back. So we integrate soy, we integrate lycopene, we integrate a little bit of everything. You eat some fish. Vitamin D supplement, even in the summer. And then we minimize, that's how we minimize the risk of getting cancer. Hormonal therapy. Increasing weight, muscle loss, proteins throughout the day. There is an increased risk of osteoporosis, so we have to take vitamin D. Proteins have a link. They decrease osteoporosis. So here we want some calcium, but not too much. So it's really not just to eat the right amount of calcium. Decrease caffeine, alcohol, and salt, which excretes calcium in urine. The more coffee we drink, the more we lose calcium. So if you have a bone problem, well, decrease your coffee consumption to 2 or 3 a day. And salt, same thing. It excretes the calcium through the urine. Long term, so maintain your weight. I talked to you about your waist size, eating a lot of nutritional fiber, become vegetarian or semi-vegetarian or flexitarian, avoid processed foods, and obviously stop smoking. Eat foods that are little processed. Food that we cook at home that have a very short ingredients list. Avoid red meat, cold cuts, processed foods. Choose lean protein, the right fats like olive oil, flax oil. These are good fats that we can cook with as well. So here, to summarize, the objective is to decrease problematic behaviors, too much alcohol, red meats, cold cuts, salt, nutritional supplements on their own, and then you want the green behaviors here. So more fruits and vegetables, fiber, nursing for breast cancer, physical activity. So, questions? Your questions, please. I'm sorry, it's inaudible. We shouldn't go before 25 to 50 grams of sugar a day. No, you're one case. You need a nutrition that's very high in carbs because you do a lot of exercise and you need lycopene. 60% of your calories should come from carbs. We want slow carbs. We want fruit. What we don't want is white refined sugar that's added. That's what we try to avoid. The 25 to 50 grams is not carbs. It's added sugar. For the question and answer period, please raise your hand and I'll come bring you the microphone because we are webcast. The people who are at home can't hear you. They hear Isabelle, but they don't hear you. So raise your hand. The second thing is we're going to alternate. There's going to be one question from the room and then one question from the web. So just to add to this, had you answered his question completely? 25 to 50 grams of added sugar, including fruit juice. That means that half a cup of fruit juice is 15 grams of sugar. And a fruit yogurt is often 10 grams of sugar. Now, there are some yogurts that are not as sugary, Triple Zero and Riviera, 40% less sugar. And then the World Health Organization, the 25 grams is pretty inaccessible because there's sugar everywhere. 50 grams, I think, is doable. It's a good compromise. It's about 200 calories in the form of sugar. Every gram of sugar has 4 calories. 4 calories per gram, so 200 calories in the form of sugar for a diet of 2,000 calories. We're going to take a question from the web. I've learned that it was preferable not to consume any antioxidants before and during chemo treatments. No supplements, but eating fruits and vegetables. That I didn't see any studies that said not to eat fruits and vegetables that are rich in antioxidants before or after a treatment. No, I don't have any data on that. But I wouldn't tell you to minimize your consumption or to limit your consumption. Once again, I'm a generalist. I'm not specialized in cancer. I've read many, many studies. I'm giving you a summary of what I've read, but I do not treat patients. So Richard Béliveau, that's all he does. So I invite you, if it's very specific to cancer, I don't want to say something and be wrong. Anyways, what we're going to do is we will probably write a blog that we'll post to our website that will summarize all of these questions. In the room, is there a question? I like apples. Is there a problem? Are apples okay? Apples? However, it's one of the fruits that's got the most pesticides. Last week, we had the publication of the Dirty 20, those that are the most contaminated by pesticides. There were strawberries, apples, and what we have to do is really clean it properly. How often do we take an apple and we hardly wipe it down before eating it? As I said, pesticides, it's mostly for farmers who spread pesticides. That's where there's a link with cancer. But there are some plant-based that have 5, 6, 7 types of residues of pesticides. Or do we eat organic? Well, there's a certain advantage to eating organic, but when we analyze bio or organic vegetables, they still have residues of pesticides because pesticides travel, and in the field next door there's some pesticides, and then you get some on the organic fruits and vegetables. There's more of an advantage to eating a lot of fruits and vegetables as opposed to the risks that are associated to pesticides. But we have to vary quite a bit because if you always eat the same fruits and vegetables, you are always exposed to the same pesticide residue. You have to brush and wash your fruits and vegetables, and that's a dilemma. Well, the apple, if I take the skin off, there's fewer pesticides, but I don't have my soluble fiber. I don't have as much vitamins, so it's always a big dilemma. What we can do as well is to take the list of the environmental working group that publicizes or that publishes this list every year. You can look at the list and say, well, these ones I'm going to buy them organic, and the rest will be regular. That can be a nice compromise. But apple is a wonderful fruit for fiber. That answers another question that we had here. We're going to go back to cancer. Here we're going to talk about what is the role of glucose in the development and the progression of cancer. We mentioned this. Should we have a low-carb diet? It's hard to answer because these are very preliminary studies. There was a study that showed that a nutrition that had 20% of the calories of carbs, there was a lower risk of prostate cancer. Is it linked? Well, it's very preliminary. We don't really want to make public health recommendations. Cytogen, for the time being, where there's 5% of the calories that come from carbs, you eat a lot of fat, a lot of butter, and we saw that fats were not recommended. Well, not bad fats anyways. This diet, the cytogen diet, seems to have some benefits, especially for cognitive function. To date, we've got promising data for Alzheimer's and epilepsy. It's very promising, but to say that we can recommend this approach, I think it's too early. I understand that if we've got cancer, we're looking for solutions quickly. I would say instead of going to cytogen, I would go to a bit less carbs. Like I said, we eat too many carbs. Reduce your consumption of carbs. Eat more fruits and vegetables without going into cyto or into the low carb. Almond milk, you didn't mention it. I like almond milk, but there's just 2 grams of protein per cup, which means that since we want to boost our protein intake, it's not a substitute for protein. However, it's enriched with vitamin D. There's few calories. It's a nice drink. It's a nice alternative drink. Yes, the taste is very good. It can be enriched with calcium and vitamin D, but few proteins. What do you think of the intermittent fasting to lose weight? Intermittent fasting, that means there are several forms of this. There are some who don't eat or hardly don't eat at all for 2 days and they eat normally for 5 days, or some who fast from morning till night. They have 1 meal a day. It takes many forms. There's preliminary studies that have shown that if we've got diabetes, it may be interesting to better regulate blood sugar. Once again, we have to be careful because if we fast, there are clinical cases after where people have food compulsions. The body needs carbs. Like people kind of lose control. They need it so badly. And intermittent fasting is good over the short term. But when we look at the studies over 12 months, it's the same effect as the other approaches, the other diets that we propose that are more balanced. So over the long term, you get the same results. Short term, a bit more impact on managing glucose levels, actually. It's very interesting to hear you. Green tea is rich in antioxidants. Taking it at the end of a meal, is it beneficial? Green tea will cause problems with your iron. So if you're anemic, if you don't eat a lot of meat because of the taste of meat, you're better off having the green tea between meals because catechins will be better absorbed and the iron from your meal as well. I've got 2 questions here. Is there a maximum of 2 per week that we can't exceed? And the second, the number of eggs. And I thought that duck was a good meat because of its omega-3 fats. So should we eat it or not? For eggs, most people can eat an egg a day without having their cholesterol go up. We blame cholesterol in the 80s, and now we realize that it's more saturated and trans fats that increase cholesterol levels. 1 egg a day, unless you've got very high cholesterol, there's no problem. And you can have as many egg whites as you want. There's some in liquid form. You can make an omelet. There's no fat. It's excellent. But for the yolk, there are components that are good for visual health. Duck is fatty, but it's good fat. It's a fat that we find in, kind of like what we find in olive oil. That's why we're not sure about duck meat. But it's a meat that is quite fatty. So when we categorize meats, it's part of red meats. But it's true that its fat profile is better than beef's. Another question? You have to wait for me. Butter or margarine? The eternal question. We've been asking that question for 30 years. Non-hydrogenated margarine, if you've got high cholesterol, nouvelle Becel, your cholesterol will not go up as much as it would with butter. However, I like the list of ingredients in butter. There are fewer ingredients than in margarine. We've got more saturated fat. Butter tastes better. I don't have butter or margarine at home. I only have olive oil from just about every country, including Australia, France. In a recipe, often we have to adapt when we add olive oil if you're making desserts. But butter or margarine, well, ideally, neither one. To decrease fat, our vinaigrettes, I cook only with oil. Don't put butter and then peanut butter on top of that. But I buy butter when I host because I find it's better. I've got a question here. 3% beers and 0.5% beers, are they as detrimental as the regular beers? Is it linked to the percentage of alcohol or to the number of calories? It's the percentage of alcohol. It's a good point because a beer that has less alcohol instead of being 5.5%, because when we talk about a drink, the problem is ethanol. And that's 10 grams. One serving is 10 grams of alcohol. So if we have a light beer, we can drink more until we reach the dose of ethanol that is detrimental. So I like light beers. What do you think about dried fruits, figs, and dates? The quantity of sugar, it's high. Yes, there's a lot of sugar. Dates, it's 2 dates represent 3 cubes of sugar. So it increases quite quickly. So you have to take a small quantity. It's like muesli cereal. It's the sugar. It increases your blood sugar level quickly. But there's some fiber. It's concentrated. Often there's a lot of calcium in figs. I prefer that to a spoonful of sugar, obviously. And if you've got a sweet tooth, if you add dates to your oatmeal, it's better than brown sugar. You can sweeten something and give a good taste by adding a little bit of vitamin and minerals, but it's still sweet. Cheese and bananas, why are they recommended when you have diarrhea? Well, bananas, there's little fiber, same with cheese. It's mainly that, is that when we've got diarrhea, we need nutrition that is low in fiber, and the banana has potassium. When we lose electrolytes, the banana is a source of potassium that helps us regain our electrolytes. And that's mainly the reason. Often, if you have an intolerance to lactose, we can't drink milk anymore. When you've got diarrhea, it's a temporary lactose intolerance. So cheese is interesting because cheese, you've got your protein, your calcium, but very little lactose. I'd like to know if there's an incidence with wild meat, deer, moose versus beef. It's not as fat. Yeah, it's less fat. There's less saturated fat. It's better. But according to the studies that I've read, there's still a lot of iron. And iron seems to be problematic. I read a study that showed that when we had enough vitamin D, it counterbalanced the negative effect of iron in red meat. I take omega-3s from algae. Is it as good as omega-3 from fish? I love omega-3 that comes from algae, but it's not as concentrated as omega-3 that comes from fish, from fatty fish. There's a bit of omega-3, but not as much as salmon or trout, but it's better than nothing. If you don't like fish, if you're allergic to fish, like I'm allergic to fish, so it's an alternative that is not too terrible. We've also got shrimp omega-3s. If there's an allergy to salmon. Is there another question? For alcohol, beer and wine, same thing? Yes, there's a difference between beer and wine. Wine is much better because red wine, especially the Pinot Noir, has more resveratrol, which is a phytochemical component that reduces the risk of cancer. So red wine is better. Taking vitamins, like Occurrence, for example, to get energy. What is it, ginseng? Yes, I think so. There are natural supplements. I'm not a naturopath, so I work with food, but there are natural supplements that are interesting. We talked about ginger, ginseng. Well, yes, there are studies that show that it can give you energy. It depends. Is it North American ginseng or Asian ginseng? That's what you have to look at. Certain supplements may be interesting, some of them. That one, I don't know it specifically. I don't know it. What's in it? Be careful with the mega doses. When you take a supplement, you can't have a big dose. It can be toxic, but that one I don't know it. We'd have to look at the composition, what's in it exactly. It depends on the composition, because if it's ginseng, in my opinion, to my knowledge, there's no problem, but it's vitamins in big doses to give energy when we know that mega doses increase the risk of cancer. We're going to take one last question. For fish in tins, is it better to have fish in water or oil? In water, because olive oil that's there, it's not necessarily the best quality oil, right? So I prefer fish in water. You've got a questionnaire here, so just write 5 everywhere, okay? Excellent, 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 wonderful. So listen, if you've got more questions, I'm going to go to my table. I've got my snacks, my books. Come see me. If not, thank you very much. You were a wonderful audience. Thank you to the people at home. Just a moment, don't leave. Thank you, Isabelle. It was very interesting. A few points, takeaway points. The conference and the presentation, which was wonderful, will be available on our YouTube channel and on our website sometime in the next week. So if you want to see the presentation once again, or part of the presentation, then there's no problem. If you have any questions, you can always send them to us. You can write to Isabelle as well at Kino Solutions, but you can send me your questions and I can send them off to Isabelle and we will take the time to answer. You know, in 25 minutes we can't answer all the questions, obviously. Now, there are a few dates to remember. The first, I talked to you about our new initiative, which are the webinars. We've got 2 a year. We'll probably increase it to 4. We'll surely come back to nutrition in one of our webinars with recipes, and they'll be like an hour long. It's from noon to 1. The first one will be held on the 24th of May. It's very simple. You register online. You watch it on the internet. and it's going to be with Dr. Marika Odette Lapointe. She is specialized. She's a neuropsychologist in oncology and a psychologist. So we will talk about anxiety and cancer. So that's coming on the 24th. You'll be able to register as of tomorrow. We're doing the launch. It's our very first one, so we're very excited. Second event, we will reveal who will be our speaker this fall. It goes with today's theme. That's why we had Isabelle for nutrition. And our second speaker in Quebec is going to be José Lavigueur. So obviously, you're in Montreal, you're present. If you want to go to Quebec, no problem. Here as well, you'll be able to register. After the webinar, you'll be able to register for this conference. But you will be able to just participate on the webinar. So like there are 130 people who watched and asked questions, who are following us online. Well, it's the same principle when we're in Quebec. So it's the people from Quebec who come in person to the conference, and the rest of the population in the province join us online. The third event, we talked about exercise and moving. This is an event, I mentioned it quickly before. We will give you more information on this by email. So the Walk of Courage, it's a walk that's extraordinary. We've got the team from the Impact is there. The Saputo family is there as well. The Montreal Canadians. We've got the Alouettes. We've got stars and celebrities, and it's very festive. And then we can choose a challenge, 3 kilometers or 5 kilometers. You walk at your rhythm, at your speed. It makes you move. And then afterwards, there's a lunch. There's beer, 5% beer or 0.5% alcohol beer. You get a T-shirt. It's free for children 12 and under. It's $30 for adults, $25 for elderly people. You get a tax receipt, but what's nice is that we've got a DJ, we've got music, people move. It's very, very festive. And that's coming up on the 17th of June. As we say here, we're at our 12th edition now. So if you all want to meet again and talk about the conference and if you want to talk about your new diets and your healthy habits, you can do it during the Walk of Courage. Last thing, those who are online, you've got a button that says survey or sondage. Just click on that button and you'll have direct access to the online survey, and all of your answers will be we will look at your answers, and I hope that everybody's looked at the survey and filled it out. That's how we can improve our events and answer or meet your needs. So that's the end of the presentation. I'd like to thank you so much. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you, Isabelle. Much appreciated.